What's up, everybody? Coach Rich Mills, Slim here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video you didn't live with. And in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down ultimate use and why you are using ultimates incorrectly, because ultimates are incredibly powerful, and using them incorrectly over and over again could be the reason why you simply cannot climb. But having clutch ultimates and using them perfectly every single time will ensure that you bring a ton of value to every single game and climb as a result. So we're going to be breaking all that down, but go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for high quality advanced guides, VOD reviews, tips and tricks. We got so much damn content, it's hard for me to portray it in this short clip. So go check it out in the links down below right now so you don't miss out. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. So right off the bat, we got to talk about the quintessential problem with ultimates. Everyone knows that ultimates have the potential to be highly impactful, but a lot of people don't really understand what that means for using them from round to round. If I ask you a targeted question like, when are you using your ultimates in your games, most likely you don't have an answer, or your answer is something completely random because you're not really thinking about when you should be investing these ultimates into rounds to try to win them, or when you should be saving your ultimates as a team. These are really important things that you need to have answered. So we're going to be breaking down many different things and rules to have more impactful ultimates every single game. Now, the first general question that a lot of people ask just right off the bat is, okay, when do I use my ultimate? Well, here's the thing. It's going to depend a lot depending on the character you're playing and the time of game. I'm going to be breaking down more specific things, but understand that not every character is going to want an ultimate at the same time, of course, and depending on the game state, the time of game, the round, the economy, these are all things that are going to affect when you should be using your ultimates or when you should be saving them for a future round. Now, one of the most important things that you need to understand is about economy. And in general, we often talk about gun economy, but you need to be thinking about ultimate economy as well, because here's the things that matter in any given game that can give you an advantage. First is numbers advantage. Having 3 people compared to having 5 people. The people that have 5 have an advantage. That's pretty obvious, but you also got to think about something like a weapon advantage. And we talked about that in many other videos, you know, having rifles or having ops compared to something like SMGs or just pistols. And then underneath that would be ultimate advantage, and then underneath that would be ability advantage. So it kind of goes down the line, but ultimates can still be the deciders of rounds. So it's really important for you to not only track your allies, but pay attention to what ultimates the enemies have, because that can fundamentally change how you play up against them. Now, another thing you need to think about is the cost of investment. If you invest in ultimate right now, you want to use it in any given round, what is the cost? And what I mean by that is, what are you missing out on if you don't actually get any value out of your ultimate, or it doesn't win you the round? Let's say you're in a 1v2 scenario and you invest your orbital strike and you don't get any kills and you don't bait out any other ultimates and you die. But later on, you had an opportunity to use that with your team in a much more winnable scenario. The cost for investment was, hey, I wasted this ultimate, and now the cost is I can't use it to clutch up a later round where it actually had a legitimate chance of winning me the round. Now, I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself. We're going to revisit this concept in a second, but let's talk about some of the ways that you should be thinking that ultimates are being used in your games. First off, let's talk about initiation. These are ultimates that you use at the start of the fight to start the engagement. The most common one that you think is like something like Jet Knives or Phoenix Ultimate, and these are ultimates that really can get value right off the bat, and they typically have high amounts of space creation where you get to take site control for free, or they have a high first blood potential where you can get a pick off on the enemy. These are typically going to be better ultimates to use when you have a full team, because you have not only protection for the setup, like think about the body of a Phoenix, but you also have more people to utilize the space that you're creating. You dash in with knives, your team can rush in. You push in with the Phoenix ult, your team can rush in and use that to take space at the same time as refrag a Phoenix ult. These are important things to understand about initiation tools. Now, the next type is similar but slightly different, and this is retake. Now, certain ultimates overlap with both initiation and retake, but retake ultimates basically allow you to take space back up against an enemy, and yes, it's going to be a lot of the same stuff, but there's important things that you need to understand, because there's a distinction here. When you're using an ability like, let's say, a Phoenix ult, which is an ability that overlaps, right, with both initiation and retake, when you're using it for initiation with your team to start an engagement, start a fight, you have your team there, you cleared all the space around it, so you're actually safe. Your body is going to be safe. After you get done with your ultimate, you're going to pop back where you started, but that body is not going to die. The enemy would have had to push all the way through your team to kill that body after you end your Phoenix ult. Now, that being said, you're using the same ultimate for Retake, you are in much more danger of a lurker, for instance, because it's impossible for you to clear every single middle area or the entire space going up to the point of you activating your ultimate and retaking. That's just something more important for you to understand. Yes, it is viable, but maybe it's better to actually clear out more space than you're normally going to, just so you know that when you activate it, you're not going to get killed right when you pop out of it. And this applies for a lot of different things. It could apply for like a Killjoy ultimate, for instance, or any number of ultimates that you're going to use that is keeping you in a static position or leaves you remotely vulnerable. Now, generally, something that you should understand about ultimates and you should be thinking about a lot is the fact that you can play for ultimates. Just because you don't have an ultimate right now doesn't mean you can't work towards it. Usually, there's multiple orbs on the maps that you can claim depending on if they've already been claimed by the enemy, and of course, you can get more ultimate charge by planting the spike. This can allow you to make a game plan multiple steps ahead. For instance, you could go grab an orb, plant the spike, go route to a body as Sage, and res it. This way you put yourself in a numbers advantage when you were at parity before, and it can be really smart to make this play in advance because if you don't do it quickly enough, you're probably not going to be able to pull it off. So that's just something that you should really think about. And of course, with a lot of defensive type ultimates, which is a concept I wanted to get in a second, ultimates that can contest spike, this can be amazing because if you're two ultimate points away from a Hunter's Fury, for instance, being the one that grabs an orb, plants the spike can be the difference between not having to contest that spike physically and doing it with an ultimate, which, as you know, is so powerful it could win you the entire round, but you have to think about this in advance. You can't just decide it on a whim, because if your ally grabs the orb, your ally plants the spike, or you don't act fast enough, you can't pull this off. Now, the next type of abilities that you should think about are combo abilities. Now, this is a little bit more niche than just using abilities on a fly or in the appropriate situations, which I'm going to talk about more in a second, but combos like a Cypher ultimate plus a Brimstone ultimate. Now, typically, you're going to actually find more combos between ultimates and abilities than ultimates and other ultimates, but it's just something to keep in the back of your mind because if you do coordinate it, you can get some guaranteed kills by using a combo of ultimates together, which if it wins you a round when the round has a lot of money riding on that round, and what I mean by that is maybe the enemy has bot ops, y'all have rifles, there's a lot of money in that round and it's really worthwhile to win, or it's a round that forces the enemy team to save, that could be really important and it could be worth the investment. Now, the next type of ultimate use that I wanted to talk about is tempo use. This is ultimate that can bring a fight to equality or stack an advantage even further and swing the favor of the round in your favor like really quickly. For instance, let me give you an example. A perfect idea of a tempo res is, let's say you're 2 people up against 4 people, right? You're in a firefight as Sage, you're 1 off your res, you get 1 kill and you instantly res. Now, not only do you kill an enemy team bringing it 3-2, but now you res, now it's at parity. And then that play combined with decisive action can typically catch the enemy off guard, an enemy who thought they had an advantage, and really use that to overwhelm an enemy. For instance, imagine if you res a breach who instantly flashes the corner and you instantly push for a play. The enemy think they're in a really advantaged fight and they might be playing loose, they might not be playing thinking about you changing the battlefield so dramatically out of nowhere, and you combine all that to really swing the team fight in your favor. This is a very powerful use, and it doesn't just have to be like a res, you could do it with any ultimate. All you gotta understand is using it after you fist for a kill. You could play default for a little while, you get that kill, you use your ultimate to snowball even further as an actual chance to turn a losing round. Now, one question I get often is, do I use an ultimate if I'm winning a team fight? Like, we have 4 players and they have 3 or they have 2. Is it worth it to even invest or should I just save it? Now, oftentimes this is gonna rely on a number of different factors, but the biggest thing you need to be thinking about is risk versus reward. How important is it for your team to win this round, and how punishing is it for the enemy team to lose this round? For instance, if the enemy have a couple of ops and you can use a Cypher ult to maybe hunt them down, that might be worthwhile. And at the same token, if you lose this round, maybe you're rocking 11-8 and you really need to win this round because if you lose, you're stuck in pistol round for that last round or that next round, then maybe it might be worth it for you to invest 1 ultimate, chase down the enemy team, screw up their buys, get another free round, and ensure that none of your teammates get picked, because out of nowhere, you know that things change. Out of nowhere, one player on your team makes a mistake, now it's 3-2 and it's losable. Now, something that you should almost never do though in an advantage is invest multiple ultimates. I can see investing one, but it's important to keep a constant communication with your allies, making sure that you don't use like 4 ultimates when maybe you only needed one to slam dunk the win, and that might even be overkill. I'm gonna leave it up to you to decide, but make sure that you're not over investing ultimates, because especially if you're losing by multiple rounds, you need to get greedy and not waste ultimates in rounds that you don't need them. Now, the next question that comes up is the antithesis of that question is, when should I use an ultimate in a losing team fight? We're down in numbers. Is it worth it to use? Now, you can use the tempo example that I talked about. I personally think that's the best way. If you're like 2 to 4, you wait actually. You play default, you play slow, you wait for an enemy to make a mistake, or you make a play, and only if that play goes correctly and you get a kill, then you ult to further that advantage. You try to swing the teeter-totter, for instance, but instead of just starting off with an ultimate, you're fishing for a kill first. Now, sometimes that kill never comes, but you still think the team fight is winnable. It's really gonna depend on a number of factors, like how much information do you have about the enemy? What ultimate are we talking about? Is it an ultimate that is gonna just get you automatic value, or is there a big question mark? You know, some ultimates are better suited for being down in numbers because they can make up that advantage. Think about a character like Reyna. Her ultimate is perfect for being down in numbers and is typically thrives in that environment and is worth investing, but there are other ultimates not so much. I wouldn't suggest using an ultimate like Lockdown, for instance, especially if you don't have to use it and you're on defense, so it's extremely good for retaking. That's gonna be a more guaranteed round win later on if you use it with your team, rather than speculating it and using it on a random round when you're down in numbers. That can be a way that you waste such a precious ultimate. So these are all important things that you need to be thinking about, and it's gonna really depend on potential value versus risk and reward, and applying that for your given situation, plus thinking about your specific ultimate and its implications. Now we get back to a really core question that I touched on, but I didn't really talk about enough, and it's the optimal versus momentum. And this is a really hard question to answer, and I'm gonna be honest with you, there is no perfect answer. Sometimes people wanna use their ultimates perfectly optimal, and sometimes people wanna use their ultimates for momentum, and I'm not gonna tell you one's better than the other, because here's the thing. Sometimes when you use an ultimate for tempo, and when you use an ultimate in the moment quick enough and catch an enemy off guard, it can be very, very strong in that moment, even if on paper that isn't the perfect use for the ultimate. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you could be waiting all game to try to find that perfect opportunity to use your ultimate, and that opportunity never comes, and you could have built up multiple ults in that time frame. I think typically some characters are gonna wanna err on the side of momentum, where they just use their ultimate when they get it. You know, Rey's rocket launcher, for instance, Jet knives, or a character like Reyna who just wants to use her ultimate often. And other characters are going to play more towards the optimal side, where they wanna set up specific examples where they use their ultimate, like that Killjoy ult for Retake I talked about. Now, the best of both worlds is to create a game state where you're using your ultimate often, or whenever you get it, but at the same time it is optimal. For instance, telling your team to play for a retake. That is the way when you're on Killjoy, you can force your team or tell your team to play the specific style that favors your ultimate, so you can use your ultimate, win that round, and then start building another one, instead of just waiting for your team to just magically line up with the most optimal way to use your ultimate. Now, the last thing I really wanted to talk about is counter ulting, and the only way to do this is understanding the enemy's ultimates and tracking them and how they correspond with yours. Think about like an enemy Sage resurrecting, for instance, but you know where the body is because you tracked it, you know she has a resurrect, and you have your orbital strike to get a potential double kill if you respond to it perfectly. Now, think about another ultimate like the Killjoy ultimate that we keep talking about. If you have Hunter's Fury in your back pocket, you can destroy it and get it shut down, but from the Killjoy's point of view, there's things that she can do, like throw it up on a top surface, so that's a lot harder for you to deal with. These are the layers of counter ulting, and the only way to make a game plan is to not only be thinking about your ultimate, but thinking about the enemies, and should you be saving your ultimate to counter theirs. This could be a decision and game plan that you make, like, hey, I have Hunter's Fury, I'm gonna save it for that Killjoy ultimate. Teammates, y'all rush onto point. If she ults, I'm gonna destroy it, don't worry about it. And that can be a proactive plan, and remember that the Killjoy has counterplay to that, but this is the layers, and from both points of view, this is something that you should understand. From the Killjoy's side, don't expect the ultimate to stick, and of course, if either of these characters are dead, the other person is more free to use that ultimate, but at the whim of the enemy using their ultimate later on. So this is just really important things to understand, and I really hope overall this has helped you think more critically about when you should be using your ultimate versus when you should be be saving it so you can get more value in your games and climb as a result. But go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for high quality advanced guides, VOD reviews, tips and tricks. We got so much content packed to the brim on the GameLeap website in the links down below. Don't miss out on this elite opportunity to climb to Immortal and beyond right now. But thank you so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video. I know I'm super hyper right now. I drank 2 energy drinks, but I love your faces. See you tomorrow.